After a PhD, life doesn't necessarily get easier, but it gets different. There's definitely a change in the way you feel about yourself and in the way that the outside world perceives you. Internally, you are conflicted. You're clever, you're well educated now, you've gone to the top of the academic ladder, but you feel there's something missing inside. And the outside world looks at you and goes, that person's got a PhD. And if they're in industry, they may even think that person has got a PhD, which means they're far too qualified for the jobs I want to give them, which can be a whole new problem. And in this video, what I want to share with you is how life changes after a PhD from my own experience and whether or not it gets easier. And it kind of does and doesn't in different ways. This video is brought to you by my newsletter. Go check it out at andrewstapleton.com.au/newsletter. The link is in the description. And when you sign up, you'll get 5 emails over about 2 weeks. Everything from the tools I use, my TEDx talk, the podcasts I've been on, and more. It's completely exclusive content that's completely free. So go sign up and I'll see you in your inbox. Okay, not doing a PhD is easier than doing a PhD. Let's just put that one out there to start with. Now, when I finished my PhD, there was a sense of relief, no doubt. And I think that sense of relief is actually relatively short-lived. And it's not that you get more problems or more difficult problems, but the challenges that you face now are just completely different. When you're doing a PhD, you're very sort of short-term focused. You know, it's about the experiments or the research you're doing that week or the year goals that you've set for yourself. And then all of a sudden, you're out the other end of a project where you didn't really know where the finish line was, but someone told you you got there, and that's absolutely okay, but you're happy about that. And then there's a sense of relief, and then there is a calm. I did feel kind of a calm. It's like, oh, I don't need to do that anymore. But the problem is that like it is not a cheat code for life. It's not like you get a PhD and all these doors open up and all these ramps appear and you're like, oh, this is brilliant. It's just that everything changes in like a very subtle way. And remember that your PhD is, can be over about 7 years, and the world is a very different place from when you started your PhD. So whether or not you would have those same challenges, whether or not you did a PhD, I don't know. Like the world is constantly changing. So there's no doubt that the initial moment after getting a PhD feels much calmer because you've just completed something that you are very proud of. And there is a sense of calm, but it doesn't last long. There's a strange paradox that appears as soon as you've finished a PhD. It's all in your own head, but it's about having more and less career options. So when you finish a PhD, yes, you have more career options. You can now become a professor. You can go into industry placements where they need you to have a PhD. In some like medical research fields, it opens up higher pay scales. So those are now open to you. But what you actually forget is that everything you were able to do before is still open to you, but those are closed off by your mind. You feel like you've got to the top and therefore you deserve to get the best job you possibly can given your training. And that was a trap that I found myself in for so long. It took me years to actually go, you know what do I actually want to do? What do I really enjoy? And I did like a SWOT analysis on myself, and I realized that I didn't need my PhD for the career that I actually wanted. In fact, it was what drew me to a PhD, the challenge, is what actually I want out of a job, out of a career. And getting a PhD really kind of threw me into a mental change where I was like, I cannot do a job that is lesser for a PhD graduate. I must continue forward and be prestigious. And that's completely wrong. So yeah, instantaneously, you've now got more career options than you've ever had. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of PhD students completely disregard all of the stuff that they can do without a PhD. There's the strange paradox. So it's not that life gets easier because you've got more jobs. It's actually the problem is you feel like you're better than these other jobs that you could have got before. And so you kind of force yourself into this much narrower field, which is strange. I think before I started my PhD, I expected the doctor title to like open up all these doors. Like I would immediately kind of finish my PhD, get my doctor title, someone would hand me a white bow tie and a top hat, and I'd be able to walk into, Houses of Parliament, and they'd be like, "Oh, Dr. Stapleton, you're here. Welcome. Here's your table." But it wasn't like that at all, and I actually find it relatively uncomfortable using my doctor title these days. I thought that maybe something would change. Definitely when I put doctor on, some official paperwork, I don't know how that makes the person perceive me, but I assume that they feel like, this person is like a medical doctor and not necessarily a PhD. And I feel like that's kind of a bit misleading, so I don't put it on there. But also I feel uncomfortable because I feel like maybe, having these different hierarchies in society isn't necessarily healthy, because all I've done is really focused on a very small part of life and come up with some new knowledge and written it down in a book. It doesn't change the way I feel about myself. If anything, it makes me a little bit more awkward. It didn't initially, by the way. Initially, I was like, I used to say to my mum, she used to be like, "Andy," and I'd be like, mm-hmm. She'd be like, "Andy," I'd be like, mm-hmm. And then she'd be like, "Dr. Stapleton," I'd be like, "Yes." So that's how I initially approached it, because I felt like I'd earned it and people needed to, call me Dr. Stapleton. Clearly that was like a joke with my mum, but I did, introduce myself sometimes as doctor. No, I didn't. I never said that. But I did want people to know I was a doctor. But now I don't. It makes me feel a little bit more awkward. So that's definitely, it's a change. I don't know if it's easier or harder, but just by not using the doctor title, it just makes life a little bit easier for me, I think. One way in which I felt like a PhD made my life easier was the fact that all of the burden that I was carrying with trying to be clever was finally lifted. Like, I didn't do particularly well in school, despite being told that I was clever and I was very capable. I did okay. Actually, I did okay in undergraduate. I got first class honours, which was brilliant. I liked that. I felt like I was pretty close to the top of the class. But once you get a PhD, it kind of takes away all of the uncertainty from other people about whether or not you are clever. And I spent so much of my life trying to be clever, trying to be perceived as clever, coming from a working class background, that, I think having a PhD just lifted that burden. When you don't see people like from high school for a number of years and they're like, "Oh, what did you do?" Or "What have you been up to?" So, "Oh, I got my PhD in Australia and now I'm doing this and this." And it kind of just immediately sets the bar, and it kind of helps me overcome that kind of issue I had by in high school being told I can get these grades and really getting these grades because I didn't know how to study. I didn't know how to do anything. So it was kind of a nice burden lifted that I didn't feel like I needed to prove myself anymore. And I think that's a little bit easier. I feel like at the moment having a PhD is in a bit of a limbo. Like, industry want clever people, but they're overlooking PhDs because they're considered overqualified or too niche. But I feel like now there's a tide change. There's so many PhDs applying for jobs in industry and in jobs other than academia that I think this is causing a lot of HR managers and a lot of hiring managers to really delve into what a PhD does, what it gives you. And I feel like in the future, going into 2022, 2023 and onwards, that people will understand what a PhD is, what it can do for their business, and not be scared about hiring someone that will move on because they'll get bored. No, that's not the case at all. There's plenty of really awesome PhD students that just want to leave research and follow another career path. And I feel like that's slowly changing. So in the future, I hope that having a PhD will be a genuine advantage. And I feel like, it could get easier in many other ways if you have a PhD. But at the moment, we're still in that weird limbo zone. So it's still a little bit better, a little bit not better. It's about how you sell yourself, really, not about how you're perceived from the outside. So there we have it. Having a PhD doesn't necessarily make life easier, but it does make life different. And Let me know in the comments what you think about having a PhD and how it's changed your life. I'd be really interested. Also, give this video a thumbs up if it's been useful, and go check out academiainsider.com, which is my new project where I host my ebook, The Ultimate Academic Writing Toolkit, that's been getting loads of great reviews. Thank you so much. And my insider forum. But I'll see you in the next video.